So here we are today, again for another episode. Brian was with me. We have Dennis as our guest. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Just fine. Really pleased to be here, Julio.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dennis. So, for the ones who don't know Dennis, Dennis is, I consider, a wonderful person in this world. Not many exist. And he really does interact with people. He's doing a lot of work with this 360 Nation and along many other works that he's been doing in the old internet, let's just say. And he's going to talk a bit about his journey. So, Dennis, tell us a bit about that.
I'll do that. And before I do that, let me just say, Julio, you and I and Brian have known each other for a while now, but in both cases, it felt like we connected at a deeper level the moment we connected. And I don't feel that with a lot of people, but that is the beginning. That is where humanity comes from. And you're going to hear that word a lot as I'm talking today, but probably the most popular question we get about 360 Nation is, who are we and what do we do? Because we're just over 13 years old now, and we evolved from like 0 to 100 miles an hour, and there was never a true business plan. And I'll tell you why. I think people say, well, what makes us different? We're a media operation. We've got a very, very large web presence through our website, through our events, through our nonprofit work. And we're different. And people say, what do you mean you're different? Well, the key difference is that we don't do anything for profit. We don't have a business model. We do everything for good, which means there's no sales pitches, there's no marketing, there's no pressure for profit. And, if you come to our website or anything that we do, you won't see any sales pitches, ads, pop-ups in your face. So I'm very blessed to be able to say that this started out with a vision of doing something entirely for good. And with that, there really couldn't be a business plan because it wasn't about pleasing our shareholders. It wasn't about generating a profit, because once you start doing that, and I've been in for-profit businesses, so you got to have a bottom line to support your business. But in our case, since we didn't have those rules or boundaries, it gave us the freedom to do what made sense, S-E-N-S-E versus sense. It also gave us a responsibility to do the right thing, because we've got this giant podium. When I say podium, I'll speak to the website first of all, because that's where we got started, and that was BizCatalyst 360. It started out, again, with just a vision. We now have over 1,200 writers on 6 continents, and we've published about 33,000 articles, and we get about 2 million visitors a year. So that is just one piece of what I'll call our global podium, which means we can speak to a very large audience. Comes back to responsibility. So we do that through our website, BizCatalyst 360. We have a lot of events. Julio, you've been part of some of those 360 Nation events. They're virtual, they're in person, they're year round. And again, there's never any charges or any fees connected to that. And then we have something else a lot of people don't know about. You can find it on our website. We don't shout about it. We just do it quietly. And it's called Good Works 360. And just to talk about that for a minute, my wife and I have been very involved in nonprofits for a lot of years, locally, nationally, and internationally. We volunteer our services, and our approach to that is the same as anything else. We don't do it for money. We will go anywhere to help any natural disaster. The only condition we have is we got to go together. We always do it together. Good Works kind of grew out of that commitment to nonprofits. And what it is, it's a virtual consulting firm. It's been around now about 5 years, and we will help any nonprofit anywhere in the world, and there'll never be an invoice for our services. When I say help them, most people understand nonprofits are pretty much small businesses. They're just called nonprofit. So they have all the operational, the social media issues, the staff issues, the org issues. So we do a lot of that. As far as how we got here.
Your vocation, as I used to say, you really vocated to people and the ideals. It's really outstanding.
Thank you, Julio. And I'd like to take credit that we had this wonderful business plan. We just said, if we start out with an assumption that there's good that we can do out there, we know humanity's out there. And our tagline, as you know, is rediscovering humanity. I said to many people, when I say rediscovering, they said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, humanity's always been there. And in its most simplistic level, you just have to keep peeling back the layers. It's like taking you go to your grandparents' house and there's an old chair sitting there, and that chair has been polished and stained and over the years, they just keep trying to keep it going. It's like humanity. We've covered it up with all these layers and layers of bureaucracy, politics, issues, world events. But if you took there and you just sanded that chair down again, guess what's at the bottom of that? Humanity do what is. And humanity is not something complicated. It's being kind. It's demonstrating love. It's doing the right thing. It's having integrity. We all know these things intuitively, but life has gotten in the way. So what we try to do by rediscovering it is frankly just reintroducing the simple concepts of all that I mentioned there. How we got here is, I didn't grow up doing this. I was in a for-profit career. My wife and I were both in mortgage banking around the world for many years. I spent about 30 years in banking here, up in Canada, in Australia, in the UK. I met my wife in England, as a matter of fact. We were fortunate that we were able to sell my businesses at a relatively young age, come back here to Tampa, Florida, which we've been living here now for about 20 years, and settle down, and that was relatively early age. So we had a chance to do what very few people have, and that's to sit there and make choices, saying, if you could do what you wanted to do with your life, what would you do?
Exactly.
Amazing.
Exactly.
So we took a lot of long walks, guys, and we ultimately decided we wanted to do three things. We wanted to take our time, our talent, and our treasure and spend more time with nonprofits. And we've done that in God knows how many ways, and we continue to do that. We wanted to travel the world because, as both you and Brian know, we can travel on business, but you don't really see much. You see the boardroom, you see the taxi, you see the airport. I can tell you so many places I spent in my business career around the world.
Dennis, just going on that, many people don't realize this. They think it's very wonderful to travel by work.
Yeah.
But you actually don't pay anything. You just go for your meetings, maybe restaurants, maybe a bar if you have time in the end of the night for a couple of drinks. And that's a bit about it. It's kind of like, you have a wonderful life. And the reality.
only positive thing is the business class, maybe.
Exactly. So, I wish I knew what I know now. Back then, I would have always added an extra day if I could to my business. Anyhow, I didn't. My wife was traveling on business too, different occupation. So when we took that walk and we said, all right, first of all, we're going to spend time with nonprofits. And I mean, roll up your sleeves. I don't mean just writing checks. So we're doing that in a lot of different ways. We said, we're going to travel the world, but we're going to do it intentionally now. And we're going to forget about the United States for now. We're going to put that at the very end of our list when we're too old and crotchety to get on airplanes. Because, there's so many people in the United States have never left because it's a big country. Mm-hmm. You can spend your entire lifetime driving across this country and discovering things. I read a statistic not too long ago that 60% of Americans have never left this country. Now, that's not a criticism, but I've learned, and we've learned now that we are intentionally traveling the world, and we've covered a lot of ground over the last 20 years. It's amazing how differently you watch the evening news when you've been out there and seen it.
Yeah.
And I can give many examples, but it's enlightened us to what a big world and what the cultures are like. And that kind of, I don't know, it just adds to your own wisdom and how you carry yourself. So we decided nonprofits, we decided travel. And the third thing is we wanted to keep our brain active. And that's where the website came from, saying we're going to build a website. We don't know the technology. We've never done it before. We're not in that field. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to go out to some company and say, I want you to build me a website, because they're going to give you what everybody else has. So we started with a blank sheet or a blank screen. I can tell you we've made every mistake you could possibly make when it comes to building a website, but with that comes wisdom.
That is,
for sure.
No one is perfect. In
Right.
the end, it's about the action. It's all it is. Even with experts, you're going to have failures.
Well, that's it. Now, we didn't know it at the time, but after building it and rebuilding it and learning and teaching ourselves, what that's given us now is the freedom to come up with a great idea or a great event or something, and we can roll it out quickly because we do all the coding ourselves. So those three things are what we wanted to focus on. And between the fact that we're doing it all for good, the fact that we're doing it ourselves, the fact that we're able to find the right harmony between what we do as a passion and the traveling, because you can do, as you guys know, you can do the internet stuff anywhere. So it all folds nicely into our existence, for lack of a better term. And we don't have an audience. We don't have team. It's just the two of us. We have enlisted the help of some local college students over the years who are going through a media program. And our pitch to the college is this: look, we will teach them what we do and how we do it, and they can teach us what they're learning in college and keeping us younger. It's been a marvelous partnership, but essentially, so it's served us well, and we're excited about what we do. It's not a job to us; it's a passion. And the one thing that came from this that we didn't know would happen, it's people like you guys. We didn't realize the relationships that would come from touching people with the words that are written on the website, with the events. And what's interesting about that is now, whenever we travel the world, we always know somebody somewhere. And we will always meet with somebody somewhere, because you can look at take our LinkedIn profile with all, we just draw a circle and say, we're going to be in the United Kingdom. Who do we know over there? So we've developed just wonderful relationships that have turned into friendships, but it all started almost by accident. And here we are meeting good people. And it's people like you and others that once we meet and talk about the vision, that you help feed that vision through maybe.
Dennis, what I would like to put a bit more in that context is that not only it's about the spread out. I mean, you had an idea that I actually didn't thought about it in that particular moment, which was interconnecting people, and you had always this vision of connecting people through the right values. And that, of course, I think when the person has these values, we immediately feel connected. And I think that was one immediate reaction that we both had, I think, when we met. And it's very important. There are people out there with same values. We just don't know where they are, and this is the best way to.
Well, I agree. That's an excellent point. Let me focus on that, because something that's kind of left the arena over the years is authenticity. Some people say that people wear masks. So from 9 to 5, you're a certain person, and then you go home and you're a different person. But when you see authenticity, which is what you're talking about there, Julio, you want more of it. You want more of it, because with that comes trust. It comes friendship, which comes all those values, which go back. That's just humanity once again. It's just being who you are, and not being afraid that Brian or Julio are going to judge me, because I'm going to show you who I really am. I'm going to tell you the truth. And it takes courage to tell the truth, and you get vulnerable. And I don't want to say I was always as open as I am today. It took time. It took practice. But that comes back to, guess what? That magic word of humanity. Be yourself. And when you're yourself, people start looking and saying, well, wait a minute. I'm going through that same thing. Julio's got a slice of his life that looks like mine. Brian's got a slice of life. So suddenly I'm feeling I'm not alone, because we all
mirroring each other.
Right. We didn't just show up this way. We've had our struggles, whether it be personal, professional, crisis. And that's the glue that brings this community together. The other thing we've learned, and this really goes back to the pandemic, is almost 5 years ago now that it crept in, if you will. And, we're building this organization. At the time, we were about 8 years old, and, we got all these writers and we're doing stuff. And then, we've been knocking at the door of rediscovering humanity, and we couldn't quite get it open because people were just too busy. And this is not meant to sound critical, but in their kind of robotic existence, get up, you go to work, well, suddenly the world stopped, and everybody's kind of in the same boat. And what happened for us,
Sorry to interrupt, Dennis. I think you have a point there, which is very important. It's a matter of people seem to be busy. Well, it's because sometimes, because of society and the environment that any person confronts most of the time, daily basis, when something real, like this happens, it's hard to believe. And
yeah,
this is kind of the content of the current society and values on humanity. I mean, if you look for humanity in society today, I mean, probably be rated as the lowest value possible, where
yeah,
it should be the first one. And I think that's the relation when people, I guess, when they see this type of conversation and the transparency and the honesty in this, they really don't believe it from the beginning, but then they see it's true. And so I just wanted to compliment,
well,
that part of, yeah.
I cannot tell you on that point how many people over the years have challenged us saying, wait a minute, there's a catch here. There's no way you do all that for good. And over the years, I spent too much time defending that. So what I finally started to say as we got bigger is, look, don't talk to me. Look at our website, speak to any of our writers, any in the world, and see if we've sold them the Brooklyn Bridge. And if we haven't, if we have, let me know. I'd like to know how much I got for it. But back to the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, we had people that approached us and said, like everybody else, you should stop publishing and you should stop and just go spend time with your family. And my wife and I talked about it and said, wait a minute. We've been climbing this hill to humanity for a long time. This is where we define ourselves. Do we retreat or do we go forward? So we did we did a number of things, but one thing we did is we went out to all of our writers back then. And at the time we had about 1,000 or so. And we said, look, we're not going to stop publishing. We're going to do just the opposite. But here's what we would like you all to do, because they were all in the same boat. Many of them had either lost their jobs or stopped going to work or something was happening. Said, we like the fact that many of our writers would write about leadership and they'd write about social media and they'd write about human resources. We said, look, we love all that stuff. And that was most of what we were publishing back then. Said, but the world's changing. Here's an idea. Why don't all of you writers take an opportunity to start writing about what you're going through right now? Talk to the world, and the world will then know they're not alone. Now, we didn't know what would happen. I can tell you, we said that to our writers in May.
But Dennis, one important step you did. You didn't know what was going to happen, but you did it because it's your value.
Well, thank you.
It's an important, very important subject that all people should commit.
Well, thank you. That's when you define as you know, in business and in life, when something goes wrong, that's when people truly define who they are. Because you're kind of stripped of all the other pretense. And now, the house is burning down. Who am I going to rescue? The world's coming to a stop. How am I going to react? So we went out to the writers and said, look, we're reaching out to you to say, we're going to stick with you. If you would like to write, please do, but tell us your stories. Well, let me tell you, from that moment forward, it changed our entire publishing area and all the way to today, most of our stories are still storytelling from the heart. They're no longer business stories because people got used to it being okay to reveal themselves a little more. And with that came humanity. We think when we felt, and we still feel this, when the pandemic came, the world stopped and, the music stopped for a lot of people. When the music stopped, you got to start listening to it or looking for it. And people were scared. And they were vulnerable, and they started looking in the mirror and kind of making a second judgment on their life and what they were doing. As the pandemic started to secede and people were going back to the office, I cannot tell you how many people I've spoken to that said, I don't want to go back to my old life. I don't want to go back to being that robot that get up every day in the morning. Now, they got to have a job, but suddenly the culture of where they were working was more important than just the job. They wanted to be... they wanted a more humane environment, or they wanted people to put human back in human resources. So they were making different choices, and that was a good thing. And we just think a lot of them were searching for something more. And we see that a lot in the younger generation, where you can read in the companies now, they're saying, we got to do more than just pay these people. We got to give them an environment that they feel comfortable in. And to many people, that's more important than money these days.
Yeah.
So there are some good things underneath the pandemic, as bad as it was, but it changed everything we did. I'll tell you, we just opened ourselves up. We started coming out from behind the publishing and doing our online events and making ourselves accessible at a time where people wanted to talk, but they couldn't leave their home. They didn't know where to go, and they didn't know if they could talk somewhere and not be judged. And
so Dennis, we have a listener called Gabby Strandler. I think if I misspelled the name, I apologize. So it's commenting, I think in advices when, and then dot, you are billionaires is not really acceptable. I have done my life from zero and I build homes for homeless interest. So I'm not following, the full comment in there. But I mean, just to reply, I think me, Dennis, and Brian, we all do the same year. We work for the community, and we try to do always our best, at least involving, well, even indirectly, mentally, to help people to be influentiated with positive impact to go through. Dennis, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I would. Let me just say, make no mistake, if you're suggesting that you've got to be a billionaire to do what we do, that's not true. Our wealth is in the relationships that we have. We're certainly not billionaires. And you mentioned the word homeless. I'll comment on that because that has been a very big piece of our lives for the last, well, ever since we started working with nonprofits. We spend a lot of our time on the streets of Tampa Bay working with homeless people. We feed them at a homeless shelter. We've helped build homes for the homeless here in Tampa. And last year, this is coincidental to your question, after 18 months of putting it together, we published a book that was entirely written by the homeless people. What I mean by that is we wanted to do a book with somebody approached us to do a book. And I said, we normally don't do things like that because we don't think for profit. But I said, if it's on the right topic, and if you let us commandeer that book in terms of how it's going to be put together, and if you let us take any profits from that book and invest it in homeless shelters and homeless nonprofits, we'll do it. They agreed, and 18 months later, it's out there on Amazon. It's called Unsheltered, because we don't like the word homeless. That's a negative word most people look down. Unsheltered means you're without a home or without shelter, but it's not negative. And I tell you, I went onto the streets of Tampa. I interviewed over a dozen homeless people because my commitment to this book was I will help put it together, but I want the stories to be told by people that are actually living on the street. I want them to tell me what it's like to be homeless because I don't think we understand it if we haven't experienced it. And I think the big misinformation out there is people are homeless by choice. That just isn't true. And they're not all drug addicts and they're not alcoholics. Some of them have those issues, but guess what? Many of those issues came about after they went on the street because they want to escape from the reality of the street. I can go on and on about it, but since you brought up homeless, I just want you to know that's part of our humanity. And that's us walking our talk, not just talking about it.
Exactly that.
I have a question actually about let's say that someone is inspired to embark on the path that you have walked. So like going into the nonprofit, making the impact without any background intentions for profit. So I can also imagine that many people are going not through a good financial situation. So let's say how would someone prepare him or herself to like put himself in the position to be able to do this without like bringing themselves into trouble in terms of finances, because we all have to pay our bills and buy food.
Yes.
And so
that's an excellent question, Brian. I mean, I've had a number of people. We mentor a number of people over the years. We're mentoring somebody, a boy in New York right now. And that's, again, part of our giving back is sharing the wisdom that we've gained. And I cannot tell you how many people that we're mentoring or friends of theirs that have said, I want to be you when I grow up. And here's the answer to that. don't make no mistake when I'm answering them. Make no mistake. I didn't just wake up one morning and say, I want to do this. I was in banking for 30 years. I didn't want to do banking. It was a job. I had to get a job. I was coming out of the U.S. Air Force at the time, blah, blah, blah. So I went through a 30-year career doing what I didn't want to do so I could afford to do what I really wanted to do, and that's this. So, you got to, do it the old-fashioned way. Earn it first. How many people are in jobs today that they're doing because they need to bring home the money, but it's not really what they wanted to be when they grow up? So I decided if I was going to be in banking, I'm going to work all the hours I have to work. I'm going to be the guy that always volunteers to go here and go there if you need me. That allowed me to go from the entry-level banking position, collecting money on the street in Philadelphia, to the executive ranks. It took me 30 years to get there, but I remember all that. But that was the price I paid, or the down payment on then being able to say, now I'm going to do what I want to do. So it wasn't easy. It was a tough story, but there's a trade-off, and just how quickly you can get there and how committed you are to wanting to get there.
Did you also have this drive before you started the nonprofit? So during this process of 30 years, did you already have like some type of direction?
We did. It's funny you asked that, because both my wife and I had a desire to give back. This is before we even met. We wanted, when we saw world disasters out there, we wanted to go help, but we couldn't because of our jobs. So coincidentally, when we got together, we said we're going to go back to that idea, and again, we're going to offer ourselves up around the world, starting with the International Red Cross, and then locally, and we become part of a disaster team. We're on something now in the U.S. called Team Rubicon, but it all came from that innate desire. It's a good question, Brian, because you got to have that first. Like, people say, well, why bother? Let somebody else do it. Well, there's a lot of people that will say that, but we've learned, and you've heard this 100 times, but I'll tell you it again. You get more than you give. We feed senior citizens every week now in Tampa Bay. We deliver every Tuesday morning to the same group every week, and we've been doing it for over a decade. And let me tell you, that's not about delivering meals. The meal's secondary. What's really important to them is Dennis and his wife, Allie, showing up and spending time with them and giving them a taste of humanity, because many of them are old. Many of them don't have family nearby. Many of them, we are the only people they see. Yeah. So, obviously, I can go on, but that's the wisdom. When I say you get more than you give, to see their eyes light up when we knock at the door, knowing, they want the food, but they want the nutrition for their soul too.
Yeah, because your drive is based purely on humanity. Because you're not based on anything on profit. So what I can understand from that is that's a very big, high level of consciousness. Yeah. And usually these homeless people, they usually run around like an apathy and shame. Exactly. And especially in apathy. So everything is hopeless. And then seeing someone show up from living due to these standards automatically helps these people to like inspire them, to bring them up, and to make a change.
So, well, you nailed it. That's very well put, but better than I could say it, but you're absolutely right. And that's the ripple effect, because a lot of people will say to us about our broader goal, well, you're not going to change the world by what you're doing, and I said, look, the world's changing no matter what we do, but if everybody took the position that I can't make a difference, then nothing would ever really change. So what we say is this: maybe Dennis and his wife and people on 360 can't change the world today, but for every conversation like this one we have, and other people hear it, and they say, wait a minute, there's probably something there, and they tell somebody else about it, and next thing you know, they're doing something good within their community. It's a ripple effect of one person telling another person. There will always be the naysayers, but there's a growing group of people, particularly as they get older, they want to create a legacy for themselves, and they don't quite know how to do it. Well, we say, come talk to us. We'll help you.
Yeah. And you also have a motive for that, Dennis. Don't wait for tomorrow. Start today.
Amen. Exactly right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Stop hitting the snooze button on giving back. Get up today and start doing, it's not difficult.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Totally agree with that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
Beautifully described.
some time ago, we had a very interesting conversation. For people who don't know, Brian was there. Dennis was the host in this conversation. We had wonderful speakers there. There was a lot of subjects going in, all about humanity in main term. And there was something that really impressed me, which was consciousness. So I think Brian would like to go through this part actually, and it's very interesting to feel how consciousness from people to people changes and has variables, all in positive impact, but with different aspects. So
yeah,
So,
I think
so can,
Brian would like to go through in this particular
I,
topic.
I would love to. Wonderful.
so can you clarify the question? This is about the human consciousness, so
Yes,
interactions
yes.
and okay. So when you go from a energetic perspective, and many people may not believe in this, but I do, due to the books that I've read, the research that I've done, and all the somatic work that I've done, I know that there's something much more behind what we all see, especially in interactions. So what I believe about when we go to the levels of consciousness, and like what I just explained about you having the drive towards humanity, which automatically brings you to a very high level of consciousness, having a conversation with someone who is in a very low level of consciousness, even on the levels that are unhealthy to the body, unhealthy to the brain, unhealthy to clear thinking and clear actions, like it has some profound impact on that. And if you go a little bit deeper, when we think about quantum entanglement, knowing that one particle can be affected millions of light years away, which is connected to a particles around here, and in not even a millisecond, when something in this particle changes, that particle changes in the same way. So why, if you would like relate that to the levels of consciousness and the way how we express the energy that we radiate when we're in a high level, why wouldn't it make like an impact that is so deep and so profound that we cannot even imagine, like what we see in this world when we make this impact? We give a, speaking of inspiration, to these homeless people or to each other, we might feel better, but we do not know what, like you said, the ripple effect, how deep that goes and how far that goes. So it's like a butterfly effect that you create.
And one point very important, which people might understand or might not understand, I'll just point it out, is we do it because in the end it's something that makes we feel better than who do humanity to others.
Oh, yeah.
And this is most of the time is misunderstood within society. People always think, no, now you want something back. It's not about that.
But people can
do
sense
it
that,
on
like this day.
100% vocation, really to the point of inspiring other people to take also their steps forward and for them to inspire others. That's the whole rhythm, as Dennis just said. And for that, you need to have a starting point. If there's no starting point, there's no action. So if everyone goes around, actually, I wanted just to mention, there was an example some time ago that I saw. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Dennis, or there are many. I saw there were many in the internet of an example of a person that was laying down on a subway. And I read it that there were like 40 or 50 people around in circle, and they all thinking that someone else will do a call. And in the end, nothing happens. And this is the whole experiment that someone did in US. And this was made in a plaza, and then was made in a subway station, also in New York. And then this person also did this experiment in some other city. But the main point of the root of this cause was everyone else, when there's a situation, they don't take the action. They should. I mean, if you see and if you can do something about it, just do it. I mean, in case in US, you just dial 911 or whatever, and then that's easy as that. And this is the main point. I think society is being departed, and as I could say, separating themselves and isolating themselves, and having the loss of the actual value of humanity. I mean, if I go out and I see someone laying down, I immediately approach this person to say, "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" But in this case, what I saw in the video was there was 50 people in circle. They're all looking at the person laying down on the floor, and no one did nothing. They all thought between themselves that someone else would actually make the call, or someone else would do the action. So this is just an example of actually how is the behavioral society in these days, Dennis. That's I wanted to to put this in the conversation.
Oh, well, Brian, you mentioned the butterfly effect. A lot of people I don't think necessarily understand, but it's a pretty simple concept. And it's a small change in one thing can lead to a big changes. People talk about a butterfly flapping its wings, and there's a typhoon on the other side of the world. But there's little things like, stepping up to help people seeing you do that and saying, wow, I should have done that. I feel bad because I walked by versus help. And so you may have said somebody like, in your own well-being, it could be a small change in your diet could have a positive change on your well-being. That's the butterfly effect of never minimize the impact of doing just that one thing.
Yes.
And allowing other people to understand not only that you did it, why you did it, and hopefully they're going to follow your lead, because there's so much of that I don't want to get involved stuff going on these days.
Yeah. Because if I then go back to Julio's story about the 50 people standing around the person who's lying down, let's say that one who's listening might come across a situation like this, and you would choose to go as first. It might take like some courage, because like subconscious things might come up, which is collective in society these days. I'm going to get judged. What are people going to think about me? Maybe I should post this on Instagram. I'd rather just videotape it. Let's say that you would go like as first to go help this person. Not in a long time, many people will come and help you, which are standing around there. Why? Because you see one people go in, they take the action. It inspires other people to take up the courage and go help. And at the same time, you're just
because what most people don't understand is people like us, we don't seek validation in our actions. And this is a very important
very good point.
Reaction that most people do not do. Today, feel like you go into social media, social networks, everyone goes in there and they all seek validation. I said, why would you seek validation from other people? I mean, it's normal. No one, in the end, not everyone will like you. It's not possible, because in the end, there's always difference of opinion, character, which is okay. And it's okay for me, and I think for every one of us. But we don't seek validation. So in the end, the most important part, as Dennis mentioned, is humanity. We have humanity as top value. It doesn't matter what it is or how it is. If I go in a car and if I see someone laying down on the road, I stop the car. Even there's 100 cars behind me. I said, I don't care, man. There's someone there. I need to see what's happening. And that's for people to understand how we are, because we don't seek validation. We do what is right in common sense. And I think people should have an awareness of creating a better version of themselves and re-educate themselves what is the proper values in humanity. Because I saw during my life a lot of things that are totally wrong in value. I mean, I saw people offending others for no reason. I saw people on the street pushing other people just because they were there and they were late for some reason, for some meeting or whatever. And then in that case, I actually intervened. I said, hey, man, what's wrong with you? The lady was here. You pushed her, almost pushed her inside the subway. and you even if says sorry or something, and say, "Well, I'm late for a meeting." Well, that's your problem. If you are late, you should put your alarm clock 2 or 3 hours before, and no getting around it. In the end, it's about organizing your life. It's not about the problem of other people. What you do yourself. So, and this is the main concept that society should have. People have this concept; they only see themselves. They go out and they see the world circulates around them, and it's their way, and it's their doing, and it's everything around them. It doesn't work that way. You are in a society. There's other people, there's other terms. You need to respect other people's opinions, and you should be there within humanity value to conciliate whenever it's needed. And organization in life should be there. It's not about, well, I got late because whatever. Well, if you go late, you organize yourself. When I have important meetings, I prepare everything from the day before. I got up 3 or 4 hours, depending what I need to do. And then if I don't know, it's even 5 hours. When I go to a city that I haven't been there yet, I always watch, is there traffic? Is there whatever situation there might be? You need to do research. And people just go there and then they think, no, it's everyone's fault. Well, man, it's your own fault. You didn't do your homework. You didn't do the research you needed to do when you go to the meeting, and all the parcours and the path you need to go to get there. And then you just blame on others because it's easy or it's easier for you. And this is what I want to phrase to everyone. Try to change this part of you, because I saw this many, many times in my life, in many ways, in buildings, on the street, in subways, in taxi cabs. I've seen it all. So just looking deep yourself and look back to any situation that actually happened in this way, and look up to see if you actually did good the way you did it. So I just wanted to open this block, and I'll pass the word to Dennis.
Well, something we are absolutely manic about, and we have been for 13 years. I can preach all this wonderful stuff and I can talk about humanity, but we are manic about actually walking our talk. Every day in our lives, we encounter something that will define who we are. And there's a guy named Carl Jung that a lot of people have heard of. He says, you are what you do, not what you say you do. So it is so important to us to live by those virtues. Somebody said to me some time ago, you want to be a good person. What does it mean to be a good person? I said, well, I heard somebody else say to me, be the person your dog thinks you are. Think about a dog. They look at you with these loving eyes. They think you're the greatest thing in the world. You may think you're the greatest thing in the world as well, but they're not judging you. Obviously, you're a source of food. You're a source of nutrition of their soul. But be that kind of good person with humans. So it's a pretty fundamental compass to live by, but it works.
And how would, let's say, I'm going to try to define my question. Where do you think that humanity is missing its essence or its part, in which they can put their attention on this again? Because this is in our core. I understand that this is in our core of each human being. If we are completely connected to ourselves and to life itself, then I do believe that we would be much more altruistic. So what do you believe that is missing? What is the missing concept in humanity that the majority is not seeing?
It's just understanding, and I keep using this word simplicity. I love your question, Brian, because sometimes we got to distill it down to what one thing can we start doing, for example, that's missing out there. Too often, we just underestimate the power of something as simple as, a touch, a smile, a kind word, listening, an honest compliment to somebody, or the smallest act of caring. These senior citizens that we deliver meals to, back during the pandemic, we had to stop taking the meals into their houses because we weren't allowed to. We had to hang them on the outside of their door. And what we started to realize, and that wasn't our decision, that was the decision of, the nonprofit, because they were trying to be defensive and they didn't want to spread any diseases. But what they failed to realize is it wasn't about the food. It was about the human touch, the compassion, the listening ear. And this is a long answer to your question, but it's also the answer to the question, what could I start doing the moment I get off this call today to make a difference? If I'm ready to do something, but Dennis, I'm overwhelmed by everything you said. Here's what you can do. It's very simple. So what we did back during the pandemic with our Meals on Wheels recipients, we picked up the phone and called them and said, look, this is Dennis. We can't come and see you today. And some of them were scared. They didn't understand why. They wanted to knock on the door. So I'm just calling you to see how you're doing. And then my job was to shut up and listen and let Annie, we have a lady that we've been dealing for her. She's a grandmother. She's 98 years old. Her name is Annie. Let Annie spend the next 10 minutes telling me about how she's doing. Very often she'd tell me about what hurts, because she had a lot of ailments at 98 years old. Very often she'd be asking questions about our travel. And it wasn't so much what I was saying, it was somebody is listening to Annie and brightening up her day. Well, think in your lives, how many people, they don't have to be seniors, how many people do you know that you've lost touch with, or they live alone, or they could just be shocked if you called them with you didn't need anything. You're just checking in to see how they're doing. It will disarm people. It will warm their hearts. And once that happens and you understand the ripple effect, you're probably going to do that more often. And that's just a starting point. You could do a lot more things than that. But just how are you? You matter to me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's very simple. Just take the action of doing something altruistic. If it doesn't matter if it's someone you know or someone you don't know.
Exactly. And then you're going to start to think, well, that was easy. And wasn't it impactful? And therefore, I could do a lot more stuff like that if I really tried. So simple. I think simple works when you're just trying to segue into what do you mean by that?
So, Dennis, how do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Oh, wow. I see myself doing exactly what we're doing, but on a broader scale. Here's what we've been trying to, it's fun. It's a great question, because every January, my wife and I, we walk every day, but we spend our January walk saying, what else can we do? We're doing the nonprofit thing. We're doing all these events. Everything is for good, and we're making an impact, and we're building a community. But what else can we do? Because, there was a movie many years ago called Groundhog Day, where the guy gets up and every day he's doing the same thing. And the next morning he's back. It's like his life is stuck in this. We don't want to become the hamster wheel that you're doing the same thing, as much as we're doing interesting things and we're enjoying them. So we're now talking about how can we take the humanity message further, because, we already have this wonderful community and it's big and it's around the world, but not that we're preaching to the choir all the time, but these folks already are walking that walk. We want to touch people that don't know who we are. Many of them could be listening today to this broadcast, frankly. So now we're talking about taking our message into, first of all, the corporate world, saying, I want to go into in companies that over the years, and I was part of those companies because I was in banking, and we used to go to these conferences, and it would be somebody on stage with a PowerPoint talking about Leadership 101. What if you brought me in, and Dennis is going to spend an hour in front of that same audience, and they're expecting Leadership 101, and I start talking about bringing human back into human resources. I start talking about changing the culture and shocking you to understand that you're dealing with people, and how people, improved culture equals improved profits. And I can connect the dots for these people. First of all, you got to have companies that are brave enough to invite you in, because it's a scary thing. You're going to change things. We all know nobody likes change. So my thought is, I can't be brought in by human resources, because then I'll just be another human resources program. I want the person at the top to say, I'm ready to change. And like everything else we do, I've said this to several corporate people, I'll just come in, just bring me there. I don't have a fee. And if you want to pay me something, I'm going to give you a name of a great nonprofit. donate it to them in your name as your company. So you get the goodwill, they win, and I've done the heavy lifting, which I enjoy doing. So long answer. We want to break this message into the corporate world now because we think they're ready, more ready now than they were before the pandemic, because there are so many executives that are used to sitting in those corner offices. I was one of them many years ago, where, everybody else takes care of the people. I'm just in the corner here and I make all the big decisions. Well, now the people want to get to know who you are. They want you to come out of that corporate office. They want to see a compassionate leader. And guess what? These leaders had never been trained in compassion. It wasn't part of leadership development. You just had to be a good manager and, hit the bottom line. So we know, and I've talked to some of these corner office people that are struggling because it was never part of their role. And so I'm offering myself up, conversation after conversation, say, bring me in. I will do it. It won't cost you a thing, but the ripple effect will be a great one. So that's where we want to go. That's not just in 5 years. That's starting now. But like rediscovering humanity, it is an uphill climb because somebody's got to be willing to open the door. We'll get there. I won't give up because I'm confident in our message, and we'll get there, Julio.
For sure. I truly believe in this. It's a thing that should not stop. It's a never-ending job for one side, but on the other side, we feel fulfilled that we are creating something different. It's written, and it's good for people and creating that positive impact that we want to achieve in the end. And I think in the end, people will feel appreciated that they know there's somewhere where people can go and talk with, and it's very important in these days. So, Dennis, anything else you would like to add? Free speech, wherever you like.
Well, I'm going to end with something we talked about. Let's just all stop hitting the snooze button on being better people and doing what really matters. Stop putting off that lunch with somebody you care about. Don't wait till tomorrow to tell somebody how much they mean, how much they matter. The only life we're guaranteed is the one right now. So let's start living it as though everything we're doing is going to count. That is, again, simple advice. You can start doing that the moment you hang up from this call. Just, be a good human being.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Bryan, anything you like to add?
What I wanted to add is in terms of about the executives that we were talking about, making an impact in the executives. And what the beautiful thing is, and maybe an executive is listening to this, is that when an executive can bring all his parts back together and connect with himself again, in which he can bring more of his humanity above, which is compassion and empathy, and more of a warm leadership, then it is not only the person itself that changes, but this person will be making an impact on the whole company. And let's say if it's a company of 2,000, 3,000 people, automatically this person will make an impact on these 3,000 people. And that's the most beautiful thing we can do.
And guess what happens? Employee turnover starts going down. And employees start talking to their friends who don't work for the company, saying, guess what I got? Maybe I don't make more money than you, but guess what I got? A job I don't mind coming to, because suddenly the world's different inside a job. It's a nice place to be.
Yes, because we need more mental health. We need also more physical health, but more mental health, much more mental health, especially in the corporates. And I do believe that if this starts with the executive, then it will make a ripple effect again on the whole company.
You're right. It's got to start. It's got to start at the top. You're right. Otherwise, we're kidding ourselves, Bryan.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That was all I wanted to share.
So, just for me, I like to add that nothing is impossible. It's in our own all decision of all citizens and all ourselves, whatever we would like to do and what we want to achieve with ourselves and with community and within society relies on people and their own thoughts. So I just say that don't be afraid of committing, don't be afraid of being honest, which is the most important thing people forget about most of the time these days. And rely in your own will. Be compassionate, be a better version of yourself. Build yourself in better values than people usually don't have, which is reaching humanity. So I think that's the part I would like to leave from this episode.
Well said.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
So, Dennis, was really a pleasure to have you here. It was really insightful conversation. We should do this more often, for sure.
Amen.
And I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for
Me too.
joining us today.
Oh,
Thank
my
you, Dennis.
pleasure. Any opportunity to get the message of humanity out, I jump on it. So thank you for welcoming me.
For sure,
you,
for
Dennis.
sure, for sure. We're definitely going to repeat. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Julio.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Okay.